Hello and welcome back to this tutorial on animating shapes. In our last lesson, we did the bouncing ball animation, and now we're going to look and see if we can create two bouncing balls. So to get into it, we come down and click on this lesson, and then we can see we've got some starter code here, which is actually the bouncing ball that I ended up coding from the previous lesson. So if we start this now, we see we've got this bouncing ball going around the screen, and every time it hits the color, every time it hits the edge, it changes color. So pretty cool, I like it. And how did we do this? Let's take a look at the code. So the first thing we did was import some functions that give us random numbers. Then we set the canvas size, and then here we declared some variables that define where the ball is and how the ball is sized. So x equals 320 and y equals 180. That gives us the location of the center of the circle. The radius is obviously the radius of the circle. We choose an x direction and a y direction, and if you remember, that's how we make sure the ball is moving. And then we choose a random color for the ball, and we actually, every time it hits the wall, we choose a new random color for that ball. So inside this loop, what do? We clear the background, we move the ball, and then we check if it's hitting any of the edges. Now, before I move on to creating a second ball, I just want to tidy up some of this code, because you'll notice that if the ball hits the top or the ball hits the bottom, we're actually running the same code. So instead of having this code twice, I can use an OR condition. So check if the ball hits the top or bottom, and I can say if y is greater than or equal to height minus radius, that's the check if it hits the top. And then I can say or the y is less than the radius, that's the check for hitting the bottom. Then do this bit of code, and then I don't need this bit at all. And then same if the ball's hitting the right edge or the left edge, I do the same bit of code. So instead of having it twice, I can just say if x is greater than or equal to the width minus the radius, or x is less than radius. Just take this check here, and then I'm checking if the ball hits the right edge or left edge, and I can now remove all of that. And that just simplifies it a bit. I'm checking if it's hit any of the edges, and then I finally set the color of the ball and actually draw the circle at the X and Y location with its radius, and then sleep just so the animation runs smoothly. Let's just check we haven't broken anything, and looks like it is all still working. Excellent. So how can we draw a second ball? Well, we know how to draw one. Maybe we can just create a second ball. Let's try it. So to do that, I'm going to copy a lot of the code. So all this code here that I'm highlighting now is kind of set up code for that first ball. And what I'm going to do is copy that and paste it here for the second ball. Now the problem is I've got the same variable name. So instead of calling it x, I need to give it a different name. So how about x2? Not that creative, but it will do. x2, y2, radius 2. The ball's going to move in a different direction, so let's give it a x-dir2 and a y-dir2, and it's going to have a different color, so we need an r2, a g2, and a b2. Now notice I've started the ball at the same location. I could start it somewhere else, but why not? Let's change the radius. Let's make it a much bigger ball, maybe twice the size, 50. And now I've just got those variables, so that hasn't drawn anything. So now I need to copy this bit here where we're moving the ball, and maybe I'll put a comment to say move the ball, and then I will paste in this, but instead of updating the first ball, I need to update the second ball, and the second ball we've decided has the variable x2 and x-dir2. So I update all these to the second ball's version of the variables, and that should move it. And then I need a check here to see if the ball has hit the top or the bottom, but this time it is for the second ball. So I need to check if the y2 variable is equal to the height minus the radius 2, or the y2 is less than the radius 2. And if that's so, then I need to change the y-dir2 variable, because now that's what is associated with the second ball, and then reset the colors of the second ball. So there we go. And then I need to do the same thing if the ball hits the left or right edge. So I can copy this code, but just do the check for the second ball. So x2. It's a bit tedious, isn't it? But this should work. But remember, whenever there's all these tedious things, maybe there's a better way. So just remember that. Let me finish this off though. R2, G2, and B2. And then now here we can, let's actually put a comment, draw the balls. So now I need to copy this, and instead of setting the fill color to RGB, I set it to the color of the second ball, and then I actually draw the second ball, but this time at x2, y2 with a radius of 2. And now I think, if I haven't made a mistake, let's see, this should actually work and have a second ball. There it is. And it's twice the size. Great. And because we have those different variables, I could start it off and I could make it the same size perhaps, or slightly smaller. So let's make it a radius of 30. And then if I start that, there we go, slightly bigger ball. Now, my question is, what if I wanted 100 balls? Do I have the variables x1, x2, all the way up to x100? I mean, that doesn't seem great, does it? So there's got to be a better way. And there are a number of ways you could approach this, but one good way that I'm going to introduce in the next tutorial series on animation using sprites is the concept of object-oriented programming. Now, what we've actually done here is we've programmed two balls. And if we take a look at these, let's say we've got a ball, and we can actually define what a ball has and can do. So a ball has these properties. We know that it has an X and it has a Y. That's the location of the center of the ball. We also know that it has a radius. We also know that it has a color. We set the red, the green, and the blue. So these things here are all properties or attributes. Let's just call them properties for the moment. Properties of the ball. Okay, so there's also some things we can do to the ball, like we made the ball move. So we could have these things that we can do on, like actions that we can take on the ball. And the technical name in object-oriented programming for these actions is actually methods. So methods are things we can do on, and there's things like move the ball. So one method that we use with sprites, which you don't know what they are yet, is the move by method. And that just lets us move the ball by a certain amount, so it's shifting it across. But there's also like a move to, which is like teleporting it to. So these are like things we can do, and these are called methods. So with object-oriented programming, we can define some kind of object, in this case, a ball. And when we define this blueprint, we call it a class. So this is the class. And then what we can do is, with this class, we can create instances of it. So we could create a ball1. And then it would have all these properties, and we could access them by using the dot notation. So we could say ball.x, and that would give us the x value of the ball. And the beauty about this is we can create a second ball, a ball2, for example, and then we can just call it ball2.x. And so now we don't have to rename all the variables like an x2, x3. I know we've got ball1 and ball2, and there's better ways we can do this as well with lists in the future using Python, but this is a first good step and introduces an important concept in programming, object-oriented programming. So if you've enjoyed this series, and hopefully you have, on animating shapes, why don't you head over to the next series called Animating Sprites and have a look at that, and you'll learn about object-oriented programming and be able to use these pre-built sprites to create animations. Excellent. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next tutorial.